Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I have this month's mixed media kit here, and I am brainstorming what I'm going to be doing with it. Have a couple of thoughts spinning around, but before I commit to anything, I am just going to go over what is in here. There's the 3-pack of wooden trays from Prima. Photo sizes on the inside 5x7, 4x6, and 3x5. Then there is a couple of Stardust butters. We have champagne and marcasite. There is a crisscross Jamie DeWardy from the Bloom collection Prima stencil. And then finally a bottle of Lindy's Moonshadow Mist in Smoky Sapphire. And there it is. Brushing it on, you don't really get that shimmer in there, but it does give a nice little effect just the same when it is sprayed on. There. When it's sprayed on and kind of allowed to pool up there, then that sapphire part of it shows up a bit better. To start, I am going to make myself a little sample spot. Kind of want to see how my mediums look together before I decide what type of gesso I want to use. If I want to use a white gesso, maybe even just a clear gesso and leave that natural wood look under there. I don't know yet. Because I really don't think I want a white gesso, but I'm pretty sure that I also don't want a black one. So maybe the natural wood will be the way I go. I'm just going to kind of make a little sample pile of stuff here and see how everything looks together. Alrighty, I have kind of got myself a direction to go. Been playing around a little bit in my mind. I have my pictures ready, but I'll go over that process when it gets a little closer to putting them in. Here's the little sample-y thing I made. I just used that little cardboardy packaging from the wood trays, because I really just wanted to see how everything looked, how the marcasite looked with the Lindy's, how the champagne looked with the Lindy's, how the Lindy's looked with everything. There you can see the little bit of the sapphire in that Lindy's Smoky Sapphire. I have a couple of things that I'm going to do because there's going to be some dry time. I'm not really going to want to use my heat gun on it, especially the stencil butters. You'll see there what I'm thinking of for those stencil butters. Trays. Towel. I need a towel. This is going to get very messy, I think. This is going to be a very wet process for my trays. So I'm going to really make sure I have some absorbency down, just it doesn't get completely everywhere. I'm going to get them a little bit wet first and let the water soak in, just so that the Lindy's will absorb hopefully a bit better, a bit quicker. And then I don't want them to be drenched in water, but I kind of want to get my surface area prepared here. I have some moisture on my surface here just to help this go in or go on or soak in or whatever. Mix up my Lindy's, and then I'm going to spray these. I don't know how much I'm going to coat them. I'm going to coat them what I think looks good, And then I will have to see if it needs more. I don't know yet. I don't know yet. All right, well, that's all off drying. I want to work on my Stardust butter, my stenciling. Just say that. Want to work on my stenciling some. This has a protective film on both sides of it. So on one side, I'm going to use just a pencil that writes on everything. Could use a marker or whatever. That just happens to be handy. And just in case it goes somewhere it's not supposed to, it's also easy to wash off. And because I want to make sure that I have the coverage I want. That makes sense. I want to make sure my stenciling will be where I need it in the colors I need it. Maybe I'll give myself a little extra wiggle room, like a 1/4 inch. So for the large tray, which has the 5x7 center, I'm just going to go 5 1/4 by 7 1/4, give or take a little bit there. And then the medium tray, the middle size tray, is a 4x6 on the inside. So same thing, add a 1/4 inch or so to them, or to my outlines. And that's because I want to make sure I have a very specific color combination in mind, I should say. And then the smallest one is a 3x5. There we go. And now I can turn it over and kind of keep track of my different sizes. And those sizes are, and my colors, I should say. So this one, I'm actually going to see if I can write backwards, because this is going to be the champagne, and this is the marcasite, and this is the marcasite. And then I'm going to take off my protective covering on this side and get my stenciling done, and then let that dry. Hence why I don't really want to use a heat gun on stencil butter or a stenciling paste on an acetate. The acetate could melt, and the stencil butter would definitely bubble up, because there would be nowhere for the moisture to go in a hurry, like on paper where it can soak through and then go through the back. That's my thinking on all of this. And then I will do my best to try to center my stencil in each one, at least center it this way on this line here. Okay, before I get on to all these pictures, I've let everything dry overnight. My trays are currently drying a top coat, so they'll be coming in eventually. But I just wanted to go over. Here we go. Here's the one where I very specifically lined up the stencil to make sure that it was at least relatively centered. And all of that's dry, and then I will just be cutting it out. And then I just decided to do 2 full strips, I guess you might say, just stencil. So as I was kind of looking at my little sample I had made, and I was just curious of how this might look. Let me turn off at least that overhead for right now, so there's not a lot of glare. So as I was just kind of looking around, curious how it might look double layered, I realized putting the other color behind, there's the champagne, is that what it is? Champagne behind the marasite. Another dimension, another layer, adding that marasite behind the champagne, you know, kind of like how that looked. So I just did this kind of in a hurry. And then that would just allow me to line up what I need, just like so, when the time comes. For the actual pictures, this is my start, my starting place. Maybe I should say this is my starting place. This is also a sheet of the Cricut acetate. Now I was thinking, you know, I have an inkjet printer, and most people probably have an inkjet over a laser printer, so liquid ink doesn't really stick to acetate very well, at least not these sheets. You know, you could get inkjet transparencies, then probably have a little bit better luck there, but it mostly just has a ghost image on it, just a little kind of area for lining up. And this still has that protective film on the back, so I haven't peeled that away. Alright, so with the sprays on there, it's kind of a little bit more, or a little bit of a frosted look. I may change things up. Don't know yet. May just use these kind of as a template. I was experimenting a lot. So there's that. There's one potential. I may just go and reposition my more non-see-through versions on just a new clear piece of acetate. It depends really on just how well my backgrounds look, or how good they look, how well they show up through that bit of frost. Because to attempt to get some ink to stick to this acetate, I sprayed the acetate with some workable fixative first. I've had luck on paper to keep ink from bleeding on paper going through the printer. Workable fixative. And then I printed this out. I have a 12-inch printer, so it takes a full 12-inch sheet. So I did that. And then I put more workable fixative on it because I wanted it to not smear. That's all that is on there, is just acetate, workable fixative, printing, workable fixative. And then I did put on some of the UV resistant. That one, the UV resistant, just because that ink would fade over time. Now, my other experiments were this. These are ready to go. These are ready to go out and get sprayed, but I wanted to talk about them first. I printed the same images on white tissue paper, just attached it to something more solid, a piece of pattern paper to put it through the printer, and then printed on that. I also have the image printed on some vellum, and this is some pretty hefty vellum. It is, let me find where that package went. Oh, there it is. It is 48 pound, 8.5 by 11 from Cardstock Warehouse. So I printed on that and printed on tissue paper. Now, neither one on their own I would have particularly enjoyed over the backgrounds, because I didn't want necessarily too much of the stenciling to show through. And especially touching, so I layered them up. After those two experiments were done, I decided to layer them up. So that's what this is just those pieces lined up and layered up. And then I just put them on this little clippy hanger I have that I take out when I spray so that I can hang it up over something and spray. That leads me to these two butterflies, which have already both been sprayed on both sides. They're not glued together in between currently because I was curious if the spray would kind of facilitate that process for me. Let me turn that one back on so I can see slightly better. So, my butterfly, my vellum, they've both been sprayed just with the UV resistant, and I did 2 coats of that on both sides to protect them, even though, you know, the back side wasn't going to be getting a lot of sunlight, but I still wanted to do some spraying. That's how those are looking. These two last pictures will be going out and getting the same 2 coats of the UV resistant spray on them. And my thinking is to see how everything will layer up. I will fussy cut because I enjoy that so much, but I will fussy cut out my vellum and tissue paper printouts and start trying to layer things up, see where everything goes, and more likely than not, I'll use glossy accents for adhesion or diamond glaze. This one, the acetate sheet, whichever one I do end up using after I see how it's looking layered up here, will be cut to the frame size. This will be the solid. My vellum and tissue paper will be fussy cut and then adhered to the top in some form or another. Alright, I'm just going to use a little cloth, like the kind used for cleaning glasses, microfiber type of cloth, and try to, remove a few fingerprints, at least from the front side of this right now, and then I'm going to figure out which ones I want overlapping for the spacing, because being spaced at least relatively evenly, there will be some that are on top of each other. And I'm going to use the glossy accents for this part because it's a little bit thicker, and maybe I can get a little bit of standing up, something like that. Hopefully that'll work out. And then I'm just going to do the same for these other ones. The glossy accent still, squeezes out, but oh well. Oh well. It dries relatively clear. Hopefully it won't be too big of a deal. I hope not. A little too late for it to be a big deal now. Okay. Fun fact, people. These are not perfect squares. Just so you should know. It will not line up crosswise. They need to be going the same way. So I'm going to grab up one of the cutoffs and I'm going to make up a champagne one real quick, going the same direction as the 3x5 one that's going to be having to go in on it. They look like squares. You try to line them up like squares, they ain't lining up like squares. This is only one spray coat of the Lindy's. I did not add any more, so you can see that's how it air dried. I let it air dry overnight. That's the original color, so I did not want mine to get any darker, and I just left it as one coat, and then put my crystal clear glaze and my UV glaze on. You can see some of that sapphire sparkly mica type powder that's in the spray in there. That's all there was to that. One coat of the Lindy spray. I let it air dry naturally, and here we are. Here's the larger tray. You can see it's a little bit of sprinkling of the blue in there. It's really a matter of what type of picture you're using and spreading across. If you are spreading a single photo across, one or two or more frames, the way my picture lined up in here at the size I wanted, I have a little hair over, like barely anything over a 1.5 inch space. So now the real question is to use the kind of frosty look of that coated acetate or not. And I still don't know. All right, now I do know. I am just going to save this for something else or other. I'm going to just cut clear acetate, or I'm going to cut pieces of the acetate without anything on it to use as my picture holding layer. After playing around there a little bit, I really do prefer a clear look. All right, so there's those. I will just use these underneath to help me reline things back up a bit here. A little something like that. So with that, I will peel off like just the layer I'm working on right now of the uncoated acetate that I am going to use, and get somethings on there to hold my photos, or well, my vellum tissue paper layers down. So I'll try to make sure that there's like as few wrinkles as possible. Obviously it's tissue paper. I knew it would wrinkle. I kind of was going for just a little bit, a tiny teensy weensy little bit of a texture there. Not enough to distort, but just texture in general. And we will see how things come along. Between the sheets of acetate, the glues will take a little bit extra time to dry, just because it's kind of gotta come in from the edges. So I mean, it's already setting up in here, but obviously not completely dry. And I'm really pretty sure, anyhow, really kind of sort of pretty sure that it is just a matter of the assembly process for me. But this is going to be like a little bit of the more extra super duper careful work here for me. I'm going to start trying to put these in. Not really going to seal them down. Maybe I'll come back. I will see how it's looking. I still want some airflow in there. If you want, sometimes you can just use a needle. And I'm just aiming behind the stenciling. Well, I'm going to try to aim behind the stenciled areas. And if you want to, expedite the process, help some air get in some other areas, you can just add a few air holes in here. And I'm just going to start in the corners, I think, and then see how things look like they're coming along as they dry. So there's that layer, and then kind of the same thing here, except with the pictures on there, the printouts on there, I can add a little bit extra adhesive behind those. If you have your corners or something trying to curl up on you, then just find something to weigh them down. Easy peasy. Easy peasy-ish. Easy peasy-ish. And now it is just going to be a matter of waiting for these to dry. After they're dried, then I will come back and show you what they more or less look like, or at least mostly dry, at least dry enough that they've quit trying to curl up. So I will finish putting these in, weigh them down if they need to be weighed down, and at least let that glossy accents set up a touch. Alright, I'm just going to turn off that overhead light because of the glare real quick. And that at least just makes it a little bit easier for you to see the finished frame set. It's not all the way dry. All those layers aren't all the way dry yet, but it is dry enough at least for me to wrap up this video. A little bit of experimentation on my part, vellum, tissue paper, acetate. Hopefully something in there gave you some inspiration to go and give some different materials, some different substrates a try for printing on, adding some layers, using some transparency, some clear acetate as a background for your stenciling, lidding that would show through with some Lindy's, giving it a little bit of color. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications if you haven't already. Give us a thumbs up and feel free to share this video. Thank you, and I will see you again next week.